shall read to you of mice and men. Never opened this book in my life, so we'll see. Of mice and men. Oh, goodness, I'm gonna hate this. Ready? A few miles south of Soledad. The Salinas River drops in close to the hillside bank and runs deep and green. The water is warm too, for it has slipped twinkling over the yellow sands in the sunlight before reaching the narrow pool. What kind of imagery is this? On one side of the river, the golden foothill slopes curve up to the strong and rocky Cabalan Mountains, but on the valley side, the water is lined with trees. Willows fresh and green with every spring carrying in their lower leaf junctures the debris of winter's flooding, and sycamores with mottled white recumbent limbs and branches that arch over the pool. What pool, yo? On the sandy bank under the trees, the leaves lie deep and so crisp that a lizard makes a great skittering if he runs among them. Rabbits come out of the bush to sit on the sand in the evening, and the damp flats are covered with the night tracks of coons, and with the spread pads of dogs from the ranches, and with the split wedge tracks of deer that come to drink in the dark. That was a huge first paragraph. There is a path through the willows, and among the sycamores a path beaten hard by boys coming down. Turn the page. From the ranches to swim in the deep pool, and beaten hard by tramps who come wearily down from the highway in the evening to jungle up near water. In front of the low horizon limb of a great sycamore, there is an ash pile made by many fires. The limb is worn smooth by men who have sat on it. Page break. Evening of a hot day started the little wind to moving among the leaves. The shade climbed up the hills toward the top. On the sandbanks, the rabbits sat as quietly as little gray sculptured stones. And then, from the direction of the state highway came the sound of footsteps on crisp sycamore leaves. The rabbits hurried noiselessly for cover. A silted heron labored up into the air and pounded down the river. For a moment the place was lifeless, and then the two men emerged from the path and they came into the opening by the green pool. They had walked in single file down the path, and even an open one stayed behind the other. Both were dressed in denim trousers and in denim coats with brass buttons. Both were black, shapeless hats, and both carried tight blanket rolls slung over their shoulders. The first man, he was small and quick, dark of face, with restless eyes and sharp, strong features. Every part of him was defined: small, strong hands, slender arms, and a thin and bony nose. Behind him walked his opposite, a huge man, shapeless face, with large, pale eyes, with wide, sloping shoulders, and he walked heavily, dragging his feet a little, the way a bear drags his paws. His arms did not The small man leaned over and shook him by the shoulder. Lenny, you're gonna be sick like you was last night. Lenny dipped his whole head under, hat and all, and then he sat up on the bank, and his hat dripped down on his blue coat and ran down his back. That's good, he said. You drink some, George. You take a good big drink. He smiled happily. George unslung his spindle and dropped it gently on the bank. I ain't sure it's good water, he said. Looks kinda scummy. Lenny dabbled his big paw in the water and wiggled his fingers so that the water arose in little splashes. The rings widened across the pool to the other side and came back again. Lenny watched them go. Look, George. Look what I done. George knelt beside the pool and drank from his hand with quick scoops. Tastes all right, he admitted. Don't really seem to be running, though. You never ought to drink water when it ain't running, Lenny, he said hopelessly. You drink out of a gutter if you are thirsty. He threw a scoop of water into his face and rubbed it about with his hand under his chin and around the back of his neck. Then he replaced his hat, pushed himself back from the river, and drew up his knees and embraced them. Lenny, who had been watching, imitated George exactly. He pushed himself back, drew up his knees, embraced them, looked over to George to see whether he had it just right. He pulled his hat down a little more over his eyes, the way George's hat was. George stared morosely at the water. The rims of his eyes were red with sun glare. He said angrily, we could just as well have rode clear to the ranch if that bastard bus driver knew what he was talking about. Just a little stretch down the highway, he said. Just a little stretch. Goddamn near 4 miles. That's what it was. Didn't want to stop at the ranch gate, that's what. Too damn lazy to pull up. Wonder he isn't too damn good to stop in Soledad at all. Kicks us out and says, just a little stretch down the road. I bet it was more than 4 miles. Demonte. Lenny looked timidly over to him. George. Yeah, what you want? Where are we going, George? The little man jerked down the brim of his hat and scowled over at Lenny. So you forgot that already, did you? I gotta tell you again, do I? You're a crazy bastard. I forgot, Lenny said softly. I tried not to forget. Honest to God, I did, George. Okay. I'll tell you again. I ain't got nothing to do. Might just as well spend all my time telling you things that you forget them. And I tell you again. Tried and tried, said Lenny, but it didn't do no good. I remember about the rabbits, George. And those were the first few pages of this book that I have to finish, of Mice and Men.